I'm now going to give the floor to Narimana Джеляла, who is a Crimean Tatar journalist and activist. He was also deputy chairman of the Medjlis of the Crimean Tatar people and was sentenced, I believe, to 17 years in prison in 2022 in connection with an alleged gas pipeline sabotage case. I give you the floor, Mr. Джеляла.
Thank you, Barbara. Your Excellencies, I spent 3 years in Russian prison because I publicly spoke out against Russia's occupation of Crimea. A week before my release, FSB officers came to see me in prison. One of them asked me, if you knew you could be arrested, then why didn't you leave? I remember how I answered with very emotionally. It was you who invaded my homeland. Why should I leave? Since 2014, I lived and worked in occupied Crimea. As a result of illegal and political motivated persecution by the Russian occupation authorities, many activists and journalists, including myself, were arrested. Criminal cases were fabricated against us. Torture and abuse were used. The testimony of secret witnesses is used as evidence. At the same time, judges do not give an opportunity to refute their lies. As a result, political prisoners are deprived of the right to a justice. It is impossible to defend yourself when the judge and the prosecutor are in cahoots. They only create a formal appearance of justice. In prison, it is also often impossible to exercise rights. It is especially difficult to obtain medical care. I often had to write applications for an appointment with a doctor every day for a week. And often these applications remained unanswered. In one of the prisons, we were forbidden to sit on the bed. We had to sit on a bench or walk. This made my legs swell. In another prison, I just had to lay down on the floor because I had a fever, but the doctor never came. Without his permission, it was impossible to lay on the bed. The heels of Rustem Gugurik, Irina Danilovich, Galina Davgopolova, Ahmed Suleimanov, Tofik Abdulghaziyev, Timur Abdullayev, and many other political prisoners is in critical condition. I have personally experienced many of the trials that are part of the life of political prisoners. Bad food, lack of medical care, moral and physical humiliation and bullying. In the Simferopol prison, I and other prisoners were beaten, insulted, and forced to learn and sing the Russian anthem. But I did not have the opportunity to experience the cruel treatment and torture that other political prisoners personally told me about. 4 people, Asan and Aziz Akhtemov, Shevket Usinov and Eldar Odamanov, who were detained with me in September 2021, were tortured. They were brutally beaten, tortured with electric shocks, threatened to kill themselves and even their children. In prison, I met a Ukrainian from the Kherson region. He told me that the occupiers tortured his wife to force him to confess the crime. Another Ukrainian said that he and other prisoners were regularly beaten and then taken out to be shot. But the executors shot near the head and laughed. For them, it was fun. Also, it is important to achieve normal conditions for political prisoners and prisoners of war in Russian prisons. It is more important to eliminate the reason why they ended up there. Russia's military aggression against Ukraine and the occupation of our territory, including Crimea. Human rights activists named at least 218 Crimean political prisoners, of whom 132 are Crimean Tatars, which indicate targeted persecution of indigenous people. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Thousands of Ukrainian citizens in Crimea fell victim to political repression. Illegal mobilization caused thousands of people to leave their homeland. For the small indigenous Crimean Tatars people, this can be regarded as a true humanitarian catastrophe. My compatriots remain hostages of the Russian repressive regime, among them my family and friends. While Ukraine, with incredible efforts, achieves the release of several of its own citizens from Russian captivity, the number of hostages of Russian regime is only growing. The release of Ukrainian citizens, the stopping of any persecution in the occupied territories are possible only if Ukraine wins the fight for its own territorial integrity. Any attempts to allow Russia to retain the occupied Ukrainian territories, including Crimea, mean the continuation of its repressive policy against Ukrainian citizens, against Crimean Tatar people. Today, no Ukrainian citizen in Crimea can feel safe and be sure that he will be able to protect his rights and freedoms, his life, if necessary. Residents of Crimea are forced to live in an atmosphere of fear, a crisis to trust in each other, and are forced to take actions against their will under pressure from the occupation authority. I can list hundreds of violations of international humanitarian law that Russia is committing in the occupied territories now. You know about them yourself. I'm sure that you understand that such a situation cannot be left without the attention of the international community. But without real mechanisms for holding a country accountable, the implementation of international humanitarian law is impossible. You understand. The Ukraine and the Crimean Tatars need your support. They want to live freely and safely. Let's support the Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.